Welcome back to the Ghost Bunny Podcast. I'm your host, Bridget Marcourt, with a brand new episode for you guys. Today, my guest is Jim Harolds. After over a decade of working on the business side of media, Jim Harolds decided it was time to dust off his broadcasting training and step back behind the mic. A lifelong interest in the paranormal, combined with his love of broadcasting and technology, have resulted in some of the most successful podcasts of their type to date. He holds a master's degree in applied communication theory and methodology and is accredited as a certified digital media consultant by the Radio Advertising Bureau. Jim has also had the opportunity to teach at the university level. In 2005, Jim created the Paranormal podcast. Jim is among a handful of pioneers of the medium. His programs have stood the test of time, and the Paranormal podcast and Campfire remain among the most popular in the genre. Jim has developed a loyal following that spans the globe. In addition to his free podcasts at jimharolds.com, Jim also hosts a series of premium podcasts on the supernatural and related subjects at jimharoldplus.com. As a result, he has also become a published author with his Campfire series. All 6 books are available on ebook and paperback at jimharoldbooks.com and via amazon.com, and have been #1 supernatural bestsellers on Kindle at various times. Both of Jim's flagship programs have reached the top 100 of all podcasts on the Apple iTunes Store out of approximately 250,000 podcasts across all categories. Campfire has reached as high as number 32, and the Paranormal podcast reached number 60. The competition at this level includes many podcasts produced by major media networks like NPR. The Paranormal podcast, which is still in production today, is the longest-running podcast in the paranormal genre. Through celebrating his 20th anniversary of the paranormal podcasting in July of 2025, Jim maintains a fascination with the unknown, and he has produced over 3,000 episodes. And I cannot wait to talk to him. Jim, thank you so much for doing the podcast today.
Oh, it's good to talk with you again. Congratulations on the new show, and thanks for inviting me. I'm honored.
Yeah, of course. So I was looking up, because for those that don't know, Jim was on my original podcast, and I was like, when was that though? And I looked it up, and it was almost 5 years ago.
Yeah, it is crazy. I can't believe it. I mean, time flies. I mean, this July, I will celebrate my 20th anniversary of podcasting. And I just don't know where the time goes. I thought maybe, like, when I thought back to that interview we did, and you were on my show, and I want to have you back on my show if you have time soon. But I was thinking, that was like 2 or 3 years ago. And it's like, nope.
I know. It's crazy. I mean, I did have you back on again for like a Halloween segment. Like there's, a few people, it was more like a Halloween party for the podcast.
Yeah.
And that was in 2022. So that makes it a little better. But 5 years, I was like, oh my God.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, and I really do have fun doing this. And I hope it shows to people listening, because I love hearing everybody's stories. I love sharing the stories. I love sharing the knowledge on investigating or mediumship and just the paranormal in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you never run out of things to talk about. And that's the thing that amazes me. It's like, and there's always something new. There's something you've not heard of. And it really blows my mind that you would think you get bored with a subject after a long time, but never with the paranormal.
Well, everybody's experiences are so unique. And the reason that they are interested in the paranormal come from a unique place too, and something very personal a lot of times. And I feel like that's so fascinating to kind of dig into what that is and then what connects us all.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of a situation where I've just always believed that there's more, more than you can weigh on a scale or measure in a test tube. And it goes back to me when I was a little kid watching. I must stress I was very, very young when I was watching In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and then Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack and all that stuff. And I don't know if you remember this. You're probably too young to remember this. They used to have this I never got them. I always wanted them, like the Time Life books on the Unexplained, and they would have like these infomercials for them.
Oh.
And they would have these big libraries, and I want that. I checked a couple out of the library, but to me, I don't know, just something ingrained in me, always wanting to explore these mysteries, because I always felt there was something more.
But you didn't have like a specific experience that triggered it. You just had an interest and a draw to it.
Yeah. I think what what maybe did it wasn't my experience, but my parents told me a couple of stories. There was a ghost story and there was a UFO story. And I think that those two stories I was told from since like I was like 5 years old really kind of ingrained that in me. If you want me to, I can share
I
that.
would love for you to.
Yeah. Well, the first one's a ghost story because this is Ghost Bunny, right? So we want to keep with the format.
But we dabble in the UFOs and cryptids too.
Yeah, I'll tell you the other one too because it's a good one. But anyway, my dad, and thankfully he's still with us. He's 89 years old.
Wow.
But hopefully that means good genes for me. But anyway, this goes back to probably the early 1960s. I'm from, as you can see above my head there, from the Cleveland area. And my dad moved here from West Virginia in the late 50s and worked, like so many people from down south, worked in the steel mills. So anyway, him and my uncle both worked in the steel mill and they lived over a bar. So and it was a very modest apartment, probably 2 rooms or something. They did have beds in separate rooms, but very modest. And like a working class neighborhood in the city. So anyway, this one night, they're both home, they're both sleeping, and my dad wakes up, and my dad was a big guy, football player, 6 foot, 210 pounds, like in the prime of life. He's like 25, 26 years old. Not a guy I'd want to mix it up with. So anyway, he wakes up and there's this old man with glasses on looking down at him and smiling at him. And all of a sudden, my dad hauls off, because he thinks somebody's like in his place, standing over him, laughing at him. Nothing. Air. Disappears. He's yelling and he's like, John, that was my uncle. John, there's somebody in there. Somebody in here. And they look all around, and my uncle has a few expletives for him. Is like, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. You're just imagining that. So anyway, about 2 weeks later, my dad's asleep, my uncle's asleep. All of a sudden, my dad hears a big commotion in the other room. And my uncle, who was the big skeptic, right? Well, he woke up, and my uncle was about 6'2" and maybe about 230. And he woke up and there was this old man with glasses on looking at him, smiling at him. He swung and he had a bigger reach than my dad did. And nothing but air. And my dad kind of theorized there was this older gentleman who would come to the bar. My dad would always buy him a drink. And he thinks that's who it was. And you got to know something about my folks. Very salt of the earth people, not people who make stuff up. My dad did have like interest in ghosts and UFOs and stuff a little bit. Nothing, to the extreme. They didn't have pyramids under their beds or anything like that. So to hear that from a young age, it's like, whoa, I believe it. Then there was a UFO story. Do you want to hear the UFO story? I do. Now, this was with my dad and my mom. And this probably goes, I'll date myself. I'll age myself. This is probably around 1970. I was a little baby. And anyway, my family was originally from West Virginia. So my parents were visiting my grandma on my dad's side. So anyway, they drop little Jimmy off to grandma to watch, and they go over to this secluded area. Now, I don't know, Bridget, why they were driving to a secluded area. And guess what? I don't want to know. But anyway, they're sitting there. And my dad admits, and it was a different time, not a smart thing, but he was having a bottle of beer. So they were sitting there and they were looking out into the wilderness. And it was pitch black because a lot of people are from rural areas. It's not like the city. When it's dark, it's dark. There's no street lights. There's nothing. Pitch black dark. All of a sudden, he said the whole sky lit up so much that he could read the speedometer numbers like it was daylight, and they used to have the old analog clocks. He could read all that. Him and my mom both said this exactly the same, like it was daylight, and it lasted for 30 to 60 seconds. Then my dad said, now this my mom didn't see. He looked to his left and he saw a man with a welding mask, he called it, and his hand out. And then at that point, he's like, let's get out of here. So he's peeling out, and it's like dirt roads and stuff. And then my mom said, in her accent, she said, then, Jimmy, I saw the biggest birds I ever seen in my life up on the bank. And there were like 4 or 5, and they had these huge wingspans, they said. So they got home, They fully expected they would see something on television. There'd been some kind of explosion or something. Nothing else happened. And it's so funny because, I don't only do the campfire show, but I do an interview show. And I interviewed this gentleman by the name of Mike Cleland, who has done a couple of books on, of all things, owls. And it seems like there's a correlation between like alien encounters and owls, and maybe they're used as kind of screen memories. And I mentioned this to him, and he speculated, yeah, maybe this was some kind of like alien encounter that my parents had, and that the birds were like a screen for something else, that it was screening some of the, and the same thing, Bridget, I was told this story from the time I was probably 5 years old. My mom unfortunately passed a number of years ago, but she always told the same story. And I'll tell you, as much as I believe my dad, I believe my mom even more, because she really had no interest in ghosts, no interest in UFOs, none of it. Not that she didn't believe that there was more. It just wasn't a thing for her.
Mm-hmm.
And they both told exactly the same story, and they're never departed from it. And I could go ask my dad right now and call him up on both those stories. And unfortunately, my uncle's passed too. But I could call him on both stories. And these are things that happened 50, 60 years ago. And he would tell the same story. And I think that made some kind of a mark. That's a very long-winded answer to a very short question.
But see, that's what I mean by everybody's is so different. What gets them interested? Because not everybody's interested. Not everybody believes. And so something has to happen usually for somebody to believe or have an interest in this, whether it was a personal experience or like for you growing up with stories. Some people just grew up where their parents were really into it. Like everybody's story is different. And so it's so interesting to see where it comes from. I don't know if this is true for you guys too, but around this time of year, Nick and I are always like eating a little healthier, exercising a little bit more, because we're gearing up for bikinis and shorts and showing a little more skin out there for the summertime. So we're always looking for like healthy meal ideas. And ideally, we want to create like healthy meal habits that will last. And we have found that this is the best time to get Green Chef. It's the #1 meal kit for clean eating. I know I've told you guys before how much I love Green Chef, but they just make it so easy to spend less time in the kitchen and more time out enjoying the summer. And especially with their new Heat and Eat meals, you can enjoy a delicious, wholesome meal in just 3 minutes. Green Chef is perfect for supporting your wellness journey. They have recipes that feature fresh, organic, seasonal produce and 100% responsibly sourced proteins to help you feel your best. They use real, clean ingredients that help you build lasting, healthy habits without the hassle. You can have salads ready in just 5 minutes, protein-filled breakfast, or nutrient-rich smoothies to fill your day. Oh, I love a smoothie. In fact, that sounds good right now. Green Chef is ready to nurture your nutritional needs. And for those of you who are particular eaters like me, they have 80 plus dietitian approved weekly meal options. So Green Chef makes it easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle and your taste. You can get Mediterranean, yum, gluten-free, plant-based, and protein-heavy, even gut and brain health and calorie-smart choices too. The recipes change up every week, and with week-to-week flexibility, you can adjust your plan to match your mood and your schedule, which thank goodness, because we have a lot of traveling planned this summer. So what's for dinner tonight? I think I'm going to have some brown butter chicken piccata with creamy lemon linguine and Parmesan cheese. Yum. Make this summer your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50GhostBunny and use code 50GhostBunny to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50GhostBunny at greenchef.com/50GhostBunny. I do have a couple questions. Do you know in the ghost story, the old man at the bar, had he passed away then?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So it wasn't
I'm
like
sorry,
astral projection or anything like that.
No. I didn't mention that. I'm sorry. Yeah, he had passed.
And then with the UFO, when she describes as birds and when you say screening as owls, are you saying that people, that they will appear to us as a bird or an owl of some sort to make it more digestible for us to experience?
That's something. And I recommend him as a guest. Mike Cleland is the gentleman. In his books, there's The Messengers, and then there's a sequel to it. And the idea is that for whatever reason, it could be presented to people as owls or some type of bird to cushion whatever impact it has. And I
Yeah.
have heard that, in terms of like aliens and alien abduction or alien interaction with actually aliens, the thought that they might present themselves in a certain way as to maybe what we're expecting or what might be more palatable or whatever the case may be.
That's so interesting. I have not heard that. And, but it is interesting too, because I think that can happen with ghosts too. Like, for instance, my very first experience, whatever appeared to me to look like my great grandfather who I had known. But
Hmm.
I'm positive that it wasn't him, but it appeared
Right.
to me that way. And I feel like it did that to make me feel safer, to make me be okay with it.
Right. Right. No, I think that makes sense. I think whatever we're dealing with these things is so much more tuned in than we are, I guess I would say. I think, the funny thing is that I think about it because I've been doing these shows a long time, and people say, well, what did you learn? And I said, well, first of all, I fully believe this stuff is real. I totally believe it. Now, I could be wrong, but I totally buy into it. I totally believe it's real. What the explanation is, that's a totally different thing, because I used to think, UFOs are aliens, ghosts are dead people, Bigfoot is a is a creature. And some of that may very well be true, but I also think there's other possible explanations. Like ghosts, for example, I do believe people get messages from their loved ones and those kind of things. I fully believe in that. And I think that's one of the nice things in doing a show like Campfire. Along with the demon stories, we get to share those kind of sweet stories. And I believe those do happen. But I do wonder how many times something like a ghost is a time slip or a time loop, or we're seeing something from the past. You hear about the stories about people who see a ghost, and the ghost is just as afraid of them as they are of the ghost.
Yes.
So I think there's multiple explanations. And I always say, I think we only see a small sliver of what's real. I mean, for right now, both you and me, our past loved ones could all be around us. Hi, Mom. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think that, they could be here the whole time and we just can't see it. Like you can't see ultraviolet light, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't see DNA, unless you have electron microscopes or whatever. But the point is that just because we can't see something readily doesn't mean it's not here.
Yeah. It's very interesting, the different theories that it could be, because I'm like you. I grew up thinking ghosts are dead people and the UFOs are aliens and the cryptids are some weird animal that we haven't discovered yet or whatever. But now talking to all these people, I feel like there's more of a connection between everything, and that we might even be mistaking paranormal or like a ghost experience, which is really an alien experience, or vice versa, that Bigfoot might be an alien of some sort, or at least something that can like go through the time loops and or be another dimension, like all kinds of things like that. And it gets mind boggling kind of, because when you think that it's a certain way and then you start talking to all these people and then you start realizing that there could be other ways. It could be other things.
Yeah, when I started, I thought this will be so cool because I'll get to talk to people like experts who really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'll have this stuff figured out in 6 months. It didn't work out. It didn't work out that way, Bridget.
No, even the experts are still trying to figure everything out.
That's right.
But,
That's right.
and I've said this before on here, that's why it's so important to have these podcasts and to have these conversations and to talk about these things publicly, because we'll never find out the answers if we don't try to investigate or talk about it or share experiences.
No, that's true. And that's the one thing I love about doing my Campfire show. We've been doing that one since 2009. That's where people call in with their true stories of the paranormal. And as much as I enjoy doing the interviews with the authors and experts, and, that's something that I'll always want to do as long as I'm podcasting, I think even more I enjoy talking to people about their stories, because if you think about it, I think almost everybody has a story, even the skeptics. And those are some of my favorites, when people call up and say, I don't know that I believe in this stuff, but there was this one time, and then they tell you this incredible story. And I think that's one of my favorite things, is that shows that there really is something to it, because, even the skeptics, most of them have some kind of story that they can't quite figure out. And that's why I love doing a campfire, is people of all walks of life.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of stories. And the thing is that there's always something new. As much as you would think after doing, I think I'm up to 709 episodes of that show, you would think that I kind of heard it all, but people will always come across with something new.
Yeah. And then there are repeat things. Like, I'm not necessarily saying with your show, but just like ghost stories that I hear all the time, like the woman in white.
No, that's
And,
true. Shadow people. Yep. Very much so. And the funny thing that happens when I'm doing my show, and this, I swear this happens. We record calls, like I'll record on Monday evening and then Tuesday, and I'll record separate calls, and people sign up, and I never tell them what to talk about. They could talk anything, UFO, Bigfoot. Most of it's kind of in the ghost arena. But what will happen is that certain calls will seem to group, and I'll have a theme. Like this last week, we had a theme of shared death experiences. And this is basically, there's a field of research on it. And basically, it's when somebody dies, like a loved one, they will come and do a visitation at the time of death. And Dr. Raymond Moody, who I've interviewed, who invented the term near-death experience, did a book on this. Any ideas? Again, you're there, all of a sudden, like your favorite aunt or your father or your brother or whoever, it just kind of appears in some way. Or there's some kind of sign, and then you'll get a phone call or a dream. One neat one I just had, it was the weirdest thing. And it was in this series of calls. It was a shared death experience, but it was for an inanimate object. This woman talked about when she used to go to her grandparents' house when she was a kid, like 40 years ago. And, decades had passed, her grandparents had passed, and she hadn't thought about that house for years. So one night, she goes to sleep and she has this vivid dream of her grandparents' house. And in the dream, her mom and her sister, who are still alive, are there and say, something like, "We've got to go." Okay. So the next day or two, next day, I think I was talking to her mom. And she said, her mom said, I got something to tell you. And she said, "What?" She said, "Well, I was at such and such a restaurant, and such and such a guy came up to me who knows me and said, 'Oh, by the way, we tore your parents' house down the other day.'"
Aww.
So she had she was so tuned. And I believe this, Bridget. I believe, we have in our brains what's here, but we also have this collective consciousness or collective unconscious that we tap into. And it's like we pick up on things. And somehow she had such an emotional connection to that house that she basically, through the dream, was in a way informed of its death.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
But that show, that series of calls, we had 4 out of maybe 15 calls, 5 of them were about visitations at time of death. And I didn't set that up. And there have been other examples, we'll have a range of calls about shadow people or whatever it might be. It's just amazing. It's sometimes I feel like there's this unseen hand producing the show. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh, I love it though. We were talking about how long you've been doing this, and you go back to 2005, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have noticed a difference in things in the paranormal since then. And what I mean by things is either people's stories or definitely attitudes towards the paranormal. Have you seen any kind of shifts or patterns or anything?
I think people are more open about it now. I think they're more willing to talk about their stories. I think maybe years ago it was a big deal if you, maybe looked funny upon if you told a ghost story.
Yeah.
And now I feel like almost everybody is very open about it. And I think that's a good thing. And, obviously all the paranormal TV has a lot to do with that. And I think podcasts, maybe a little bit mine, but other podcasts have a lot to do with that. That people say, hey, this is part of the human experience. The weird thing about that, though, is I think there's still a big stigma about UFOs.
Really?
I think people are far less likely. I think people feel like they have permission to say, "I saw a ghost." I don't think people feel like they have permission yet to say they saw a UFO, let alone being abducted or seeing an alien. Then I think they're really ridiculed. The other thing I think that's changed, if you follow science, a lot of the stuff that's coming out is making all of this sound much more plausible. You talk about quantum mechanics and all the things that they're discovering. And then on the UFO front, we see all the things that science is saying about. Just recently, they said that there was a planet that they've discovered that they think definitely has life. I mean, it's 125 million light years away or something. But they said, yeah, according to the James Webb Space Telescope, it probably has life because it has chemical makeup and signatures that would only exist if there were life. And, 20 years ago, they're saying, there's no life. We're the only life in the universe. So I think the science is catching up. I think people are becoming much more open to it. Again, except for that UFO question. I think when it comes to personal experience, I think people are still way more leery of sharing UFO stories.
I think that they probably are definitely leery about sharing an abduction or an actual alien sighting.
Right,
I feel
agree.
like a UFO, like seeing something in the sky is okay. Like it's okay if you saw that because so many people have seen something they can't identify in the sky or whatever. But abduction, then it's sort of like, okay.
Yeah, kind of like, well, the thing I will say this, if somebody says, I have tea with the aliens every third Thursday of the month, I do have a little bit of skepticism, but I try to approach, the campfire show to me is, and I'm not really fond of this term, but it's probably the best term, is safe space, in that I don't want to ever ridicule anybody. And basically I'm going in with the default of believing them. And this is a place you can share your story. I'm not going to, I'm not going to cross-examine you. I'm not going to make fun of you. Like if you think about those old morning zoo radio shows, maybe they had people call in and they'd start laughing at their stories and things. That's not what I do. Basically, it's like, I'm Jim. I'm the campfire listeners. We're all interested in what happened to you. You tell us, because I think it's very important to hear people's stories and to listen to them and to respect them, because who knows what happened? I wasn't there. And I know that, some weird things have happened to me, not typical paranormal things, but some weird things have happened to me that I think had a paranormal bent to them. And I didn't make them up. So I tend to believe people.
Yeah. I mean, and what people look at as paranormal too varies. Like some people, there's like the third man syndrome or like
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, where like they were gonna, like maybe they're at a red light and they start to go and they hear somebody yell stop and they slam on the brakes.
I had exactly that story. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
There was a woman whose father had died maybe a year before, and she was at a stoplight and she started to go, and she audibly heard her dad's voice say, "Stop." She stopped. Right through the intersection. A car would have T-boned her. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it was so funny you said that, because that's a thing and I believe in it.
Yeah. But some people might look at that as that's a paranormal experience, and other people might think, have a different explanation for it, or not go as far as to say that was paranormal. But to me, that's very much a paranormal experience.
Yes. And I do believe in guardian angels. I just had a call and it was really, really, I don't know how to categorize it. And I don't know, but it kind of reminded me of that, a guardian, like a guardian angel. In this case, it was a dog.
Aww.
And, well, it's not that heartwarming of a story, but it was kind of weird. So anyway, I guess this person's grandfather, I don't even think this has been on the show yet. Grandfather was like a minister, or he was out trying to convert people, like in this town. I don't remember what town it was. This is decades ago. And it turned out that he teed some people off. They didn't like the way he presented himself. So he was in his place he was staying, and three burly men come and knock on the door. Now, the funny thing is, a couple days earlier, this little dog had shown up, and he didn't know anything about the dog, but it was like a stray, and he showed up. So anyway, these guys are going to like beat him up, and this dog is behind him. It's a little dog. And all of a sudden, they totally change their attitude. And they're like, "Oh, we're sorry we bothered you. We're sorry. We'll go." They were going to beat him up, right? The guy theorized that dog did some kind of, the dog scared them away, this little dog. And his theory is that the dog had shape-shifted in some way to frighten the men away because there was no other reason. I mean, they were guns blazing. They're going to beat the crap out of this guy. All of a sudden, they get a sight of this little dog and they're like, okay, I'm sorry. It's okay. You have a nice day, So, and then another favorite story about an animal guardian has to do with Christmas. There was this young woman. She lived by herself. She wasn't particularly religious. She wasn't particularly a Christmas person, but it was, 23rd, 24th of December, and she was very depressed. All of a sudden, and she lived on a second floor, and it was like steep steps you had to go up. A couple days before Christmas, this collie shows up, and the collie looks pristine, like it had been cared for and everything, but had no collar. And she's like, I don't know who this belongs to, but I'm not going to let it out in the cold. I think she was in Chicago or somewhere. So she let the dog in, and the dog stayed with her a couple of days until I think the day after Christmas. And she said, it was just so nice to have that dog. She, slept with the dog. The dog slept in bed, and it was just like having a friend. And the dog was so gentle and kind, and she fed her and so forth. So I think it was the day after Christmas. She lets the dog go out to do what dogs do outside. Dog runs off. She never sees it again. But it's almost like that dog was put there to take care of her.
Yeah.
And because she needed that emotionally.
Yeah, so she wouldn't be alone for the holiday.
Exactly. I totally believe that happens. And I guess that's what I like to say about the paranormal. I believe it is a continuum. Yeah, I do believe that there's evil. I do believe that there's more sinister energies. I believe all that stuff is true. But I believe there's also good. And that's what we always want to present to Campfire. Probably the headline of the show says, he didn't have a head. It's like a headless ghost, which is a story that we had this last week. But within there, you'll have a couple stories of like, well, my mom passed and she got a message to me and those things. It's kind of like making people eat their vegetables. But I guess my point is that the reason we do that is I think it reflects reality. The paranormal isn't just spooky, ooky, scary. It is. Part of it is. There's no question. There's scary stuff. And there's sweet stuff, too. I think it's both.
Well, anytime there's unknown, it could be spooky or scary to people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite genre? Is it ghosts, or like are you like, oh, a UFO
I like
story?
the head scratchers. I like the ones that make you go, okay, like the Twilight Zone-y kind of ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you an example of one. And, I've done so many shows and told me so many stories. So if I told this on your last show, I'm sorry. But here's one that
it was 5 years ago.
Got me. Yeah. Well, here's one that got me. There was this woman, this was like in the 80s, so nobody had cell phones. And she was going to college, like a commuter college about an hour away from her house. She was taking evening classes. It's up in New England somewhere, so it's cold, it's wintertime. So anyway, she's driving there. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. It's dark, it's wintertime, and the car stalls out. And she's on a freeway. And she's like, oh, crap, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Cell phones didn't exist. So anyway, she pulls off to the side. And she's like, well, I'm not just going to sit here. And she looks and, down off the side, there's a parallel, like 2-lane road. And there's a service station, a gas station with a garage and the lights are on. She's like, oh, I'm saved. I just got to get down this embankment and they can help me and I'm saved. So anyway, she walks down there and she goes in. She tells the guy's situation, the camera. He wasn't super helpful. It was like 5 till 8, I think it was. Yeah, 5 till something like that. And he said, well, we close at 8 o'clock. But she said, maybe the owner can help you. He lives next door. And then all of a sudden, the guy appears almost like she doesn't know where he comes from. So anyway, he's like, well, I'd be glad to take a look at your car. No problem. He walks up there with her and he says, well, this is nothing I can fix tonight, but I can give you a tow. And she said, oh, thank you so much. So he gets his tow truck, tows it up and said, well, where do you usually take your cars? And she tells him, and he tows it there. Never mentions a charge or anything. And then he says, now, where do you live? I'll take you back to your house. And this is like, late at night. It's going out of his way. And this is an older gentleman, kind of a fatherly presence. And he takes her there. And then finally she says, well, what do you want? And he says something like $20 or whatever, which was very reasonable. So she goes in the house. gets a check, writes him a check, gives him a check, and he says, I just want you to tell your folks everything is going to be okay, which she kind of thought was weird, but he was just so nice, just like out of central casting. So anyway, she gets her car fixed, whatever. A couple days later, she's going shopping. And she said, with her mom and her sister, and said, let's take a detour because I want to drive you past that gas station where this guy helped me. He was just like the nicest man in the world. And they drive past Bridget, and the place is boarded up like it's been closed for 10 years.
Those are so eerie. I love those stories, but those
are
eerie.
My favorites.
Yes.
Those are my favorites. Yeah, because there's so many directions that could go. Was that an angel? Was that a time slip thing? That gets back to what we're talking about. There's so many different explanations to that story. And which one it is, I don't know, but I believe it's true. There's a great online host, Jimmy Church, who tells a story about, seeing a place that was, I think it was in Indianapolis, and it was there, and then it wasn't there. There was another story we had on Campfire. It was a group of kids playing behind their development or whatever, and they looked in the woods and they saw a clearing, and there was like this old house, and there's like, a woman and a little boy like in knee pants, like you might have seen like in the 1920s or 30s or something. And he's looking at them and they're looking, and the mom kind of pulls him away and pulls him back into the house. And I thought, that's weird. We never noticed that before. And then like a few days later, they said, well, let's go exploring. So they walk over to the clearing. There's part of the house, the foundation of the house, and the rest of the house is gone.
I love it. Yeah. I love those stories.
So those are the ones. Those are the ones that really hit me. And of course, the visitation stories. I think that is so kind. We had one recently where, and this one I don't think's been on the show either. It was a brother and sister, and their mom passed. And, some time had gone by, and the brother said, please give me a sign. And then he got a couple signs through the day, which were meaningful. But the most meaningful sign, his dad got an anonymous text. And the text was, you are my sunshine. Well, you remember that old song?
Yes.
You are my sunshine. That was the song that she would, the past mom would sing to both the kids. Just telling them that they are her sunshine. And it was from a disconnected number, because the dad's like, who is this? Who is this? And it was on her birthday.
I love that too. I'm very fascinated by, you've touched on a lot of things that I'm very, very interested in, near-death experiences, but also like phone calls or emails from the dead. Mm-hmm. It's just so fascinating to me, like how often this happens, and the stories of it. And a lot of times they're very sweet stories like that, like somebody just wanting to say I love you one more time, or just connect one more time. They're so sweet.
Now I've got a creepy one though.
Oh, good. I love creepy. Let's go.
I might not get, because this has been several years ago, so I might not get it exactly right, but this is the gist of it. There was this guy who worked, him and his wife, they were, I think they're archaeologists. And there was going to be a situation where they were putting a highway or something through. So the state or whoever it was hired them because they knew, or they suspected, that there was a graveyard, unmarked graves. And they wanted to be respectful to the dead. They were going to put this highway through, but they weren't going to just bulldoze through this possible graveyard. So anyway, this guy gets this, he gets this call. He has this really eerie dream, and all these weird things happen. And on the other end of the phone is somebody that says, stop digging the graves. It's like, and I know I'm missing some key parts of the story there, but that would just be freaky enough for me. I don't know about you, but I would put in my resignation the next day. I'm not doing that. But they were doing it respectfully. They're trying to do it the right way and those kind of things, because it was an unmarked graveyard. But yikes.
Well, yikes. I feel like that is very respectful, because I feel like a lot of times they do just like for Cheeseman Park, for instance, in Denver, like a lot of the graves are still there. They just moved the tombstones.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of another story. I don't know if we've talked about it before. What do you think about haunted objects?
Oh, I believe in them and I stay away from them.
Yeah, me too. Well, anyway, this guy, Michael from California, called in, and he was trying to furnish his house. Him and his wife, they were on a budget, so they went to this estate sale, and he got some prices of stuff, and there were a few pieces that he wanted, but it was way beyond his budget at the time. But he had a card, and he gave it to the woman who was running the sale, and said, I can't afford the current prices, but there's some pieces I like at the end of the week. If you have to get rid of anything, give me a call, so forth and so on. So the woman calls at the end of the week and said, there's a lot of disrespectful people here and people trying to get stuff for nothing. And you were so nice. So why don't you come on down and see if we can work some things out? So anyway, they negotiate on some pieces. And she said, here, I want you to take this mirror. And it was a big gold framed mirror, big mirror. She said, I think it's meant for you. So anyway, he gets the mirror. He puts it upstairs in a room. No, he puts it downstairs, excuse me. So the one day does he put it upstairs? I'm getting confused. I think he puts it upstairs. So one day he's upstairs, he's taking a nap, and he wakes up, and something wakes him up, and he looks in the mirror, and there's in the room, there's a group of people. And before this, there was a lot of nobody would be downstairs and he'd hear stomping and all these weird things started happening once he brought the mirror in the house. So when he wakes up, he sees a group of people and there's one main guy. And he's kind of doing this, rubbing his eyes, doing this number. And the guy says, we like to dance. We didn't get to finish our dance. That's where you come in. And then they disappeared. But then weird stuff continued to happen. But here is the thing, Bridget. A couple of years later, I was doing follow-ups with people, and I did a YouTube video with him. He still had the mirror, and the mirror was behind him during the interview. And I'm like, man, I would get rid of that mirror so fast it would make your head spin. Would you keep the mirror?
It depends on what was happening. So I'm really sensitive to stuff like that. I don't even like to go to thrift stores or anything like that. I just get an ick vibe, a lot of feeling. There's a smell to it. To me, every one of them smells the same. And it's I get this weird sensation, too much energy or I don't even know what it is. I'm not a medium or psychic or anything like that, but I get a certain feeling when I go to a lot of those places. So I stay away from them. The gold mirror sounds amazing. I love I'm picturing a big Baroque gold mirror. And I'm I would love that mirror, but it depends on what was happening with it. If I just heard footsteps every once in a while, I might be okay with that. But if I kept waking up and there were people in the mirror in my room wanting me to dance.
Yeah, that was weird. In the whole message, we like to dance. I don't know what that meant. Maybe him bringing the mirror gave them the freedom to come out. I don't know what it was. But you're just like my wife. She hates thrift stores.
I want to like them. I want to be able to get cool pieces, one of a kind things or whatever. But I can go inside, but I'm just not comfortable.
I used to be more into that, but since I've been doing these shows and I've heard about haunted objects and talked to people like John Zaffis, the haunted collector, and different people about haunted objects, I'm a little more leery now.
Yeah.
And I noticed when you go through family effects, old stuff that hasn't been touched in a long time or those kind of things, you feel kind of a weird energy. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good, but I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it. I don't know if anybody else has ever had that feeling going through the effects of someone who was passed. And it's kind of a icky, weird feeling.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I feel with thrift shops. It gives me a not good feeling along with that smell. And I just feel I'm gonna stay. I'm not somebody who people love to go to little towns and go to all the thrift shops or all the estate sales or all that. And it sounds like a fun day and they really enjoy doing it. But I'm just I'll see you later.
I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and I'm getting closer to the end, but but I used to love that. It's like, oh, you get all these great treasures and stuff.
Yeah.
Now I'm a little more like, oh, well, that was somebody's and they're probably not here anymore. How sad, you know? I don't know. I've changed my perspective.
Yeah, for sure. But the mirror thing did remind me too. I would just went and stayed at Haunted Airbnb in Jackson, California, and there's a mirror in one of the rooms there where she showed me a photo that somebody took. They were sitting on the bed and they took a picture into the mirror, and
Uh-huh.
it looks like there's a whole family of people sitting on the bed with them.
Oh my gosh. I would be like, Zoink Scoob, let's get out of here.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Have you ever gone ghost hunting, or do you ever do that?
I don't. I'm boring. I don't know. I think it's actually there's a reason other than laziness. There actually is a reason. Now think about like football announcers, right? You've got these great football announcers who played the game: Michael Strahan, Tony Romo, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
They're great. They're fantastic, and they bring a perspective to the game that nobody else can bring. But I also think equally as valuable are the broadcasters who bring the straight broadcasting look at it. What's his name? Joe Buck or Mike Tirico, Al Michaels, those kind of people. And I think it's valuable to have people who aren't ghost hunters do these shows too,
Mm-hmm.
because you bring a different perspective and you're kind of like, you're of the world, the paranormal world, but you're not in it,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I could go and I would never say never, I wouldn't do it for fun. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But for whatever reason, I kind of made the decision that I was going to take the traditional broadcaster role, where I'm more of an observer and I ask experts about it and I get people's stories rather than focusing on my own investigations. It could change over time, but I'm kind of set in my ways at this point, I think.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a little bit of both. Like, I love going to the places. I love doing an investigation, but I'm more there for an experience, just to see it and experience it rather than hardcore investigating. Like, we have to do everything by the book and we have to set all this stuff up. Or I'm just like, oh, if we have a tool, cool, let's use it. Let's just see what happens. Let's see how I feel.
Yeah. I'd be interested in your opinion on something, because doing these shows, there's one thing that bothers me more than anything, and it's not the demon stories and it's not, those kind of things. I mean, not that I'm a big fan of demons, but that's not the thing that bothers me the most. The thing that bothers me the most is this idea of stuck souls. The idea of, like, let's say that somebody dies in a terrible car accident and they're stuck because they don't know that they're dead. That really bothers me because, in everyday life, sometimes the world just isn't just, and bad things happen to good people and those sorts of things. But I always like to think that the universe on some level is just, and beyond we get our just desserts. And if you're a good person, there'll be a benefit to you, you'll reap your rewards on the other side and have a great afterlife. I would hate to think somebody is stuck through no fault of their own. What do you think about that?
I don't really believe that. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows the answers. But to me, I believe that they go back and forth. I believe that grandma can come and visit and then go back to wherever it is that she's existing right now. I believe they can be in more than one place at the same time. And I don't know that I believe in the theory of somebody being stuck. I feel like maybe they have, like people have said, unfinished business, and maybe you could consider that stuck because they're waiting until they can say what they want to say or see who they want to see or whatever it is they need to do. But I feel like that's stuck on their own will. You know what I mean? Like they could give up on it if they wanted to, but they don't want to. They have something that they want to say or do or whatever. So I don't know. Who knows the answer? But I just don't believe in it as people that are stuck. And I also feel funny about people who try and free them or make them go to the light. And
because
like that.
Who knows what we're guessing at what we're doing. We're on the same page with this.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way. It's like, who am I? I mean, is there somewhere you go to get a degree to unstick souls? I mean,
yeah, I hear people doing it all the time. And I just feel like, well, if they wanted to go, they're on the other side already. So I feel like they have more information than we do on this side.
Exactly.
So if they don't want to go to the light for some reason, maybe there's good reason not to. for that
Yeah.
person, you know?
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too.
Yeah, so I like to believe that they're not stuck, but again, like, we just will never know. We are not gonna
Yeah.
know in our lifetime. We're not gonna know till we're there with them. Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is how it
Yeah.
works."
Yeah. Another thing that fascinates me, and this really fascinates me, is the near-death experience.
Mhm.
I think that is so amazing, and I've interviewed a lot of people about that, and just the commonality of what people say they experience. The
Yes.
life flashing before your eyes. These stories of people who saw people on the other side they didn't realize had died. They had like just died like in a similar time, and how people change after they have that experience, and the fact. I know the skeptics say, well, it's all brain chemicals and it's evolution's way of helping you cope with the dying process. Well, how do you explain somebody describing a medical procedure perfectly
Mhm.
from above? How do you
Right.
explain that? What chemical causes that?
Right.
And that's where I say BS to the skeptics on near-death experience. One of my favorite stories, I could never remember his name. His first name is Bruce. He's a
Oh, Dr.
doctor.
Grayson. I
Yes,
was just
you've
gonna
had
ask
Dr.
you if
Grayson.
you've had him on your podcast or
He's
he's
fantastic.
amazing, and his book was so good.
Did he tell you the story about the operating room and the guy flapping his arms like a chicken?
Wait, I don't recall that one.
So, and I won't tell it as well as he did. But basically, the idea is that this guy came out of a near-death experience and said, well, my doctor was flapping the surgeon who was working on him was flapping his arms like a chicken. And Grayson thought, oh, that makes no sense. Well, it turns out that the surgeon, in order to keep sterile, he would point with his elbows to the different instruments. Like, give me a scalpel, give me sutures, give me this. And it would make it look like he was flapping his arms like a chicken. And this guy would have had absolutely no way of knowing that.
Yeah. Well, see, stories like that make me think,
Because
how
it's
can
real.
anybody be a skeptic? Like, how could people know
Yeah.
that?
I mean, you might be skeptical of one certain story, but the
Yeah.
whole category, I don't. I think I was talking to somebody today, and believe me, I love science. I mean, you used to have a satellite to do what we're doing right now from our home studios. I
Mhm.
mean, it's amazing. But science has its limits. And I think to some people, science has become just as much a religion as any other religion. And it's like, you can't question it. Oh, it's against the dogma. And the thing is that science is evolving and things that we thought were right 5 years ago are turning out to be wrong. I mean, you can go back to history, how many times science has been wrong. Go back to Copernicus. I mean, you could go back and point out that science, it's a moving target, right? And science evolves and gets better and gets more information. So I think that those who are, big proponents of science, and I am, again, I love science. We couldn't do what we're doing now without science.
Yeah.
But you got to be a little more humble about it. And science doesn't have all the answers and never will have all the answers.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's always evolving. So, we come a little bit closer, and then it might be a few more years and you find out another little bit of information, or maybe that one
Right?
wasn't quite right, but this is a better explanation now. And so it's
That's
always
right.
just moving and evolving, and that's how we learn things. Curious, what are your feelings towards Halloween?
I love Halloween. It's great. I think the thing about Halloween, when I was a kid, it was a kid thing, right?
Yeah.
And over the years, over the decades, it's become a kid and adult thing. And I think I know the reason why. I think Halloween, like for those of us who celebrate Christmas, is one of the few times we get to be kids again.
Mm.
And obviously, there is all the interest in the paranormal and the supernatural. That's a big part of it. But we can be kids again. And we're almost given permission to believe in the paranormal and the supernatural and those kind of things at Halloween time.
Yes.
And it's fun to dress up. So, I mean, I think that it's a combination of those things. People are fascinated about the paranormal. It gives them permission to be fascinated in the paranormal,
Mhm.
maybe to play act a little bit and to be kids again. And I think it's great. And it's amazing. I would say you asked earlier, I didn't think about it, but the biggest changes in the last 20 years, I mean, even Halloween in the last 20 years has exploded. It's probably the second biggest holiday in the United States.
I think so,
in
yeah.
terms of like money spent and those kind of things. You've got these pop-up stores those weren't a thing 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's great, and it's great for our business.
Yes.
People are interested. And I love that because that's the time of year, and I'm sure you feel the same way. You get to introduce people who might be interested in the topic, but they don't give themselves permission. Become, September, early October, they say, well, it's Halloween time. I'll listen to Ghost Bunny or I'll listen to Jim Harolds Campfire, and then we got him.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's a good time of year. But I had a note on here, and maybe I'm mistaken, but were you anti-dressing up for Halloween?
No.
Oh, okay.
That must have been somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know why
I dress up every year. Oh, I wish I had the pictures. Every year we make a big thing. We do a live stream. I've dressed up as Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows.
I love that show.
Yeah, I dressed up as Joker. I dressed up as Chucky. Probably the best one was Pennywise from It.
I did
That's
Pennywise
my
too.
favorite.
I did a girl Pennywise.
Yeah. I've got to send it to you because every year I know I love dressing up.
Okay, good. I'm glad I had that wrong.
It's just the opposite. No, and it's fun, but it's getting harder to come up with something. I think I did it maybe the year of the pandemic.
Me too.
I think that was the best one.
Me too, because I had the mask that had its teeth.
Yeah, I think I did the more Tim Curry one, like the classic.
Oh,
one.
okay.
But it was good.
Yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah.
I'll send you the photos so you could see it.
You send me yours, I'll send you mine.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, when you first were starting out, I'm curious, were there other genres that you had in mind, or were you like, nope, I want to do a paranormal podcast? Or were you just thinking, I could do a podcast on automotives, or I could do a podcast on ghosts? Or
well, nobody's car would run if I did one on cars. But no, well, basically what it boiled down to, I'd gone to school for broadcasting, but I ended up working behind the scenes, on the business side. And, at that point, I'm in my 30s. I've got two small kids who are now both graduated from college. I'm old. And also, I have mortgage and, it's like, well, I'm not going to drag my family down to Paducah, Kentucky and start in radio all over, in front of the mic. Mm-hmm. That wasn't an option. But what was an option was something I just heard about called podcasting. And I'd heard great podcasters like Leo Laporte and Adam Curry and real professional broadcasters like, oh, I can't do that. And then I listened to some of the homemade ones from 2005.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I can do that.
Yeah.
And then to your question, I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do politics because I want everybody to like me, as many people as possible. Not everybody's going to, but I'm not going to argue politics. Sports, what am I going to add? I'm a fan. Music, you can't do podcasts on music. You couldn't then, and you still can't, unfortunately, really. And I thought, well, really, what fascinates me? What's something if I started this, not only the act of podcasting, but every time I go in a bookstore, every time I go in a library, when I look something up on the early internet, or I watch something on TV, paranormal, always fascinated about it. And I'm like, what if I have my own paranormal talk show? Nobody will listen to it, but it'll be fun. And that's what started it. And I've had, I think you might have had him as a guest. Lloyd Auerbach was my first guest.
Professor Paranormal.
He was awesome. Imagine coming on a podcast in 2005. The first question is, what's a podcast? And then I got the guy who basically broke open the Roswell case, Stanton Friedman. He's passed since, unfortunately, a UFO legend. So, I mean, my first two guests were like two of the best guests you could have. And I'm sure that, boy, I probably sounded really stupid to them, but it worked out.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was wondering, I mean, I assumed that you knew Lloyd and had him on your podcast before, but Lloyd
he's awesome.
Yeah, I take classes with him at the Rhine, too.
He's so, I wish he would get more recognition. I really do. Because he's the kind of guy that they really should be holding up. I mean, he tells one of my favorite stories, and I'll probably get this wrong. So Lloyd, if you hear this, I apologize. Yeah. But he was doing work for that old TV show Sightings, mm-hmm. which I later learned was produced by Henry Winkler, which I didn't know.
I didn't either.
But anyway, they were doing an investigation of a house where there had been a murder, and people kept seeing the victim. seeing a ghost of a victim. But the weird thing was they also saw like a ghost and apparition of the murderer. And the murderer was still alive in prison.
Okay.
So the point is that, to our point, we were talking earlier about ghosts being just dead people. Well, the one ghost was dead and the other ghost was very much alive. So the question is, what is a ghost?
Right. So that was more like an imprint, like the residual energy type thing going on there.
I don't know.
That's so interesting. And then there's the whole astral projection thing too. Like some people think they see a ghost, but that person is still alive and they've astral projected, which I'm just like, oh my God, can people really do that?
I'd be afraid to do that. It would be cool, but I would be afraid to do it.
I think I would be afraid too. But then I think for some people, it just sort of happens naturally and not voluntarily. Like my stepdad was saying that he has vivid dreams, and I don't know if they're dreams or this is just how he describes it, of like flying and going places and things. My sister said she has it too. And she's my half sister. So she's my stepdad's real child, but my half sister. So they're related by blood. So I feel like those kinds of things kind of run in the family.
Yeah, that whole thing of lucid dreaming and vivid dreaming and those things, that's fascinating. And there's something about the dream state.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe, sometimes you'll go shopping and you'll be in the produce department and later that night you'll have a dream of flying on a head of cabbage. And that's kind of like a junk drawer dream, right?
Right.
And I think that's a real thing. But then you'll have these really, like that dream I told you about the lady with the house that was torn down. You'll have these really insightful dreams. Or many times we have people who say their relatives visit them in dreams. We've had cases where, maybe there was something valuable and the person had died and they were trying to find it and they got the message through in the dream.
Yeah.
Or people describing it as being more real than real. I have one story, and I don't want to take all your time here.
No, I love it. I'm so into it. Like, I know we're at time, but I'm like, keep going.
We have one story. It was a woman in Britain, but I believe she was living from Britain, but she was living in the States. And she had she had a boyfriend at the time that this story occurred. And she thought this guy was like her future and they were going to get married and have a family and everything. So she had this dream that I guess they were in England at the time she had the dream, but they were like United States, like Florida or something like that. And it was her and him, and he was driving, and there was a little boy she didn't recognize in the back. And they're driving in like this kind of tropic kind of area, like a Florida, and there's palm trees and everything, but it's raining like hell. So anyway, in the dream, the little boy says, "Do you want a sweet?" and hands a piece of candy through the two seats. He goes to turn and get the candy, and they get in a horrible car wreck. Well, the weird thing was she was having the dream. She was with her boyfriend. They were both asleep. They both woke up at the same time. They had the same dream. But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
So maybe a year later, they're down in Florida. They're driving in a car. There's a little boy in the back. It's a driving rainstorm. And they're driving, and the boy says, "Do you want a sweet?" And he doesn't turn around and they don't wreck.
Yeah.
So it turned out that he wasn't the one. She ended up with some other guy. But the point being that, what was that?
Right.
I mean, was that something warning them? Again, were they tapping into that collective unconscious? I don't know the answer.
Like
and that brings us back full circle. Something's going on. I just don't know what it is.
All of us. We're all in the same boat.
We are.
Did I ask you before, since you're in Hawaii, Hawaii?
I wish I were in Hawaii. Now, see, that's I like that. That's kind of like manifestation. Right?
Yes.
Yes. Keep doing that.
Yeah. Maybe okay. Hawaii. Well, since you're in Ohio, I don't even know how. I was reading it too. I don't even know how Hawaii came out of my mouth. Have you ever been to the Midwest Railway Preservation Society?
I have not.
Okay. I'm just curious
Where
about
is
it.
it?
It's a railroad museum, and they have one of those old like turn things there, and
Mm-hmm.
they have some very historic like locomotives and one from like the steam engine days, and one of them was involved in like a really bad accident that killed like 27 people.
Oh my Lord.
But like it's called the death car, and it literally steamed people to death when it
Oh my
crashed,
gosh.
and they have it there, and they say that there's over 17 spirits that inhabit that car. And I was just curious if anybody that lives in that area has ever been there or seen it.
I will look that up, and I'll have to make a point to go there. I
Yeah.
love old trains and that kind of thing, so it'd be perfect fit.
Yeah. Well, I know we're out of time, so let's just save the rest. I'll just have to have you back on and save the rest of the questions.
I like that.
So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories with us. Tell everyone listening how they can listen to both of your podcasts, follow you on social media, buy your books. We didn't even talk about your books, all that good stuff.
Yeah, here's one of the books, by the way.
There it is.
Anyway, jimharold.com is my website, jimharold.com. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Jim Harold, and you can find my multiple podcasts. There's Jim Harolds Campfire, the Paranormal Podcast, the Paranormal Report, and a bunch of other stuff we can do. Or we do. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. And Bridget, always a pleasure to be on your show. Good to reconnect, and all the success in the world with Ghost Bunny.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Ghost Bunny Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on my spooky adventures, and I look forward to sharing a new ghost story with you each week. Please subscribe to my podcast so you're always the first to know when a new episode is out, and follow me on social media at Ghost Bunny Podcast on Instagram, at Ghost Bunny Podcast on YouTube. Oh, and I'm working on that Patreon. Stick with me, guys. I promise I'm going to have content on there soon. Bye, guys.